You all seem to like the first Crusades video. Well, at least if you didn't like it, you left me a pretty flowery, to say the least, comment on it. So I figured let's do one more, because I've got the script here from an essay I wrote a while ago, so why not, let's just do it. Raynald of Hattin remains one of the most controversial personalities from the Crusades. Both contemporary and modern sources refer to him as either a violent extremist responsible for the destruction of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, or as a martyr, and the true example of what it meant to be a crusader. His actions, though, well, they demonstrate a few other things. They mostly demonstrate that Raynald of Hattin was a self-serving ruler who was more willing to turn against his fellow Christians if it meant increasing his wealth, and then cementing his position of power, than many would have you believe. The reality also demonstrates just how stupid Ridley Scott is and how crap his films are, but we'll get into that again later, not that I've ever shied away from it. See, contrary to popular beliefs, Hattin's aristocratic position in France allowed him to leverage his position within the Levant to rise to the position of not just as a random Templar, no. He was the Prince of Antioch through marriage, and the Lord of Kerak. In order to maintain his position in Antioch, though, Raynald repeatedly launched punitive raids against Armenian Christians and Orthodox Christians, in just to raise money to funds to make himself more rich and his regime more stable. And although he lost that princely title in Antioch well before the events of that stupid Ridley Scott movie, he was able to leverage that position in itself and his reputation to gain power as the Lord of Outer Jordan, the ruler of Kerak. And in this position, he further acted like a self-serving you-know-what by ignoring treaties, assaulting deep into Islamic territory, and doing nothing but absolutely galvanizing the Islamic forces to come and want to kill him and to destroy the kingdom. Not that they needed any more galvanizing in the first place, it was always their plan, mind you. But that does raise a question. We always tend to have a negative opinion of the man. But we have a negative opinion based on modern sources that he's purely just a cartoon villain. But let's draw it back. Let's go with what we know. We'll go back to the start of his time in the Holy Land and the Levant. Let's figure out whether or not Raynald was as much of a crook as I claim, or whether or not he was the perfect crusader. Now, to start with, the lineage and nobility of Raynald of Hattin has itself been a topic of contention in, well, understanding the actions of the history of the man in himself. I mean, we can barely agree on where he came from, let alone what he got up to. And this controversy largely stems from the marriage between the widowed Constance of Antioch and Raynald, with William of Tyre claiming that he, Raynald, was in fact a mercenary knight, calling into question the suitability of the match. Now, it should be noted that Tyre, although a fantastic source, was a political adversary of Raynald later on in the Kingdom of Jerusalem, and he didn't like him very much by all accounts, so his account can't entirely be taken at face value. In reality, Raynald was born into a highly influential noble family in the Duchy of Burgundy, before deciding to take the cross and to travel to the Levant during the Second Crusade. This decision, as claimed by the historian Barber, is likely due to the confiscation of his lands in France. Raynald's motivation to stay in the Levant and fight within the army of Jerusalem following the French king's withdrawal can be viewed as a way that he attempted and wanted to get some land back after losing his own back in Europe. The choice to fight allowed him to leverage his standing with King Baldwin III of Jerusalem to marry Constance of Antioch and install himself as the ruler of the principality. See, Baldwin had enough issues to deal with without having to defend Antioch, so having Raynald there as a loyal ruler, well, that suited his situation perfectly. Now, William of Tyre claimed that Raynald's subjects were both shocked and appalled that their princess had married a man of such low status, furthering the perception that Raynald was a low-born commoner. The lack of surviving coins minted with Raynald of Hattin's likeness does indicate his position in the principality may not have been the most stable. This instability is further indicated by the fact that Raynald alienated the local clerical officials, including his Latin patriarch. Hattin's reign over Antioch was marked by a lack of funds, possibly being the reason no coins were minted in his likeness, but also brutality, as the brutality of Raynald's reign is highlighted by the refusal of his patriarch to pay tribute, allegedly leading to the patriarch being arrested and tortured into submission. Raynald's actions in Antioch therefore indicate his lack of scruples and willingness to do anything to maintain his status. However, Chatillon's actions during this period are detailed solely by William of Tyre, who, as I said, really is a biased source. But we do have some other primary evidence about what he got up to. So Raynald's 7-year reign over Antioch would be marked by a series of campaigns designed to reinforce his command over the principality and ensure its expansion and survival. Raynald's desperation for money, though, led to his torture of the Latin Patriarch, according to Tyre, did not lead to his excommunication. This highlights that the retelling of the event is likely mired in a bit of misinformation, considering, you can't really go and torture your Latin Patriarchs, and it's based on interpretations of the parties involved, at least what we know today. On the other hand, it has been theorised that Raynald was avoiding excommunication due to his abuse of said cleric, as the cleric who was allegedly abused had an ongoing conflict with the Archbishop of Tyre. What is really evident, though, is that Raynald was not afraid to betray the institution of the Catholic Church, which he had sworn an oath to, in order to ensure the continuation of his power. Raynald of Chatillon would later actually be excommunicated over his conflict with the powerful Catholic state of Genoa, and following this he would launch a campaign into the rebellious Byzantine subjects in Cilicia at the behest of the Byzantine Emperor, the Greek Orthodox Byzantine Emperor, in exchange for money. When the Byzantines did not pay, Raynald was more than happy to turn on his benefactors and launch a punitive campaign against Byzantine possessions in Cyprus, handing over the conquered Armenian positions to none other than the Knights Templar. This period of Raynald's life demonstrates his willingness to turn on allies for personal gain, fitting the description of a crook. These actions cannot be defended as one of an effective crusader due to his repeated attacks against Christians, which fundamentally ordered the papal instructions to make war against the infidel. Raynald would make war against anyone should the result prove more profitable. Raynald's attempts to raise funds were not limited to raids against Christian forces though, make no mistake, but also against the various disunited Islamic rulers neighbouring the Principality of Antioch. According to Matthew of Edessa, it was on one of these raids in an attempt to raise funds that Raynald himself was dismounted, captured, and imprisoned for 15 whole years. The raids by Raynald into the Muslim kingdoms seeking to raise capital only served to unite the local Islamic forces under Nur al-Din, which weakened the position of Antioch until the unexpected death of the Islamic leader in 1174. Raynald's imprisonment did reduce his status due to his stepson gaining control in Antioch, but it did sort of recover a bit when his children started to get married off to powerful rulers, granting him the ability to enter the direct service as a powerful vassal of the Kingdom of Jerusalem through marriage, as the Lord of Outer Jordan and Hebron. Raynald of Chatillon would leverage his land's position controlling the trade routes between the Islamic kingdoms of Syria and Egypt to expand his personal power and wealth, being later named as the commander of the kingdom's military forces. Raynald's effectiveness as a military leader is contentious when considering his movements in battles. For example, at the Battle of Montgisard, where a small Christian force defeated a much larger Islamic invasion under Saladin, primary sources such as William of Tyre and Raynald, the squire of Balian of Ibelin, attributed the Christian victory at Montgisard to King Baldwin IV. This is in direct conflict with Baha ad-Din, who, writing after the fact in the 13th century, would attribute the victory to Raynald. Although Baha ad-Din wrote after the fact, it is important to note that Raynald was factionally opposed to William of Tyre and Raynald, with each party supporting a different successor to Baldwin IV, whose death due to leprosy was a matter of when, not if. It's one thing that Ridley Scott got correct was Baldwin IV was dying of leprosy. It's one of the few things that Ridley Scott got correct. The most evident example of Raynald's hubris in provoking conflict with the Islamic world is the naval raids into the Red Sea by Raynald's forces, which directly threatened Muslim pilgrimage routes to the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. This assault was undertaken at a period where Saladin was at war with neighbouring Islamic rulers in his attempts to unite Islamic forces under his rule in what was a highly unstable realm. See, most people don't realise most of Saladin's career was spent fighting other Muslims, because he was barely fighting Christians, because the Islamic world was so disunited. So uniting it by sending a force to attack the holy cities, well, it was more than a little stupid. Raynald's raid into the Red Sea, of which it must be noted he took basically no part save for the initial siege of Aqaba, served only to galvanise the Islamic world into a unified force. Due to threats made against the holy cities of Islam that these raids caused, Saladin subsequently ordered that all Christians captured during these raids be executed in retaliation. These executions of the Christian forces would prove to be of immense propaganda value to Saladin, who ordered the men be transported to different major cities in his empire and executed, to prove to everyone that he himself was the only ruler who could effectively defend Islam. There is controversy in modern scholarship regarding whether Raynald's assault into the Red Sea and later his assaults on Islamic caravans was an attempt at robbery and self-enrichment, or rather, whether they were an attempt to stop Saladin from expanding his realm. The British author Stephen Runciman, who, mind you, is such a Byzantine fanboy that he can't really be trusted on anything that remotely criticises the Byzantines, was highly critical of Raynald, stating that Raynald could not avoid the temptation as he could not understand a policy that ran counter to Raynald's personal wishes. Runciman's claim is referring to the peace that had been reached between Baldwin IV and Saladin within the Levant, and it's not without merit, as Saladin used these assaults as a casus belli to launch his invasion into Outer Jordan and Jerusalem. Raynald's actions during his rule of Outer Jordan can therefore be described and argued as either that of a proactive crusader or a self-serving crook depending on your perspective and our lack of knowledge. However, what is highly evident is that Raynald's aggression directly influenced the Islamic invasion of the Kingdom of Jerusalem and subsequent destruction of the Crusader army at the Battle of Hattin. The death of Baldwin IV removed the final hurdles for Raynald to act as Runciman described in a way he himself saw fit. Chatillon had leveraged his friendship with Sibylla, the sister of the late king, who was not out there banging Balian of Ibelин's long-lost son from France, that never happened, to manoeuvre himself into the position of kingmaker, supporting her husband Guy of Lusignan and his faction to rule Jerusalem. Now, according to Histoire de Heraclius, Raynald seized the apparatus of state within Jerusalem shortly after Baldwin IV's death, and ensured the crowning of Sibylla by personally accompanying her along with the Templar Grand Master himself to the Holy Sepulchre. By seizing power within the kingdom for a more amenable monarch to his actions, Raynald now freely was able to attack Islamic caravans without fear of Christian reprisal. Defenders of Chatillon state that he was within his right to attack these caravans as they were protected by armed men. However, this does not consider that Raynald's previous assaults on unarmed caravans kept happening, and that subsequent necessity to prepare for attacks, should they be transiting Christian kingdoms, was kind of the smart thing to do. Raynald's continuous attacks against Saladin's forces, coupled with his earlier raid into the Red Sea, further united the Islamic world against the Christian kingdoms, and ensured that Saladin's invasion would have unilateral support and that he wouldn't be stabbed in the back when he tried to march forward. It would further be allegedly Raynald himself who advised King Guy to march the Christian army away from the city of Jerusalem in an aggressive attempt to defeat Saladin, only for the force to be annihilated, like I said, at the Battle of Hattin. Christian sources differ on their critique and praise of Raynald's actions both prior and at the Battle of Hattin, with William of Tyre laying the blame of the defeat on his actions in triggering Saladin's invasion, while writers in Europe such as Peter of Blois refer to him as a martyr defending the true cross. Although mired in controversy, it cannot be denied that the actions of Raynald of Chatillon in aggressively pressuring Saladin, while at peace, unprovoked, triggered the Islamic invasion that destroyed the Christian army at Hattin. And that brings us to the 21st century, to our understanding of Raynald of Chatillon and our understanding of the Crusade and the fall of Jerusalem as a whole. And in the 21st century, the understanding surrounding the figure of Raynald of Chatillon remains highly controversial and really politically charged, treating him as either a martyr for the Christian faith and an example of what a crusader should be, or a murderous criminal. We still haven't decided yet. The disagreement on his betrayal can be traced to the accounts of William of Tyre, a writer who, while widely accepted as accurate, was a part of the political faction in direct conflict with Raynald, who was trying to get Sibylla on the throne, while William of Tyre and Ernoul were trying to get someone else. William of Tyre's relationship with the Latin Patriarch of Antioch and Raynald's subsequent treatment of said Patriarch further necessitates the need to critically look at William's recounting and descriptions of the man. Concurrently, the Islamic sources' vitriolic descriptions of Raynald can't really be taken at face value either, due to the raids into the Red Sea kind of upsetting them, threatening either intentionally or unintentionally the holy sites in Arabia, with Ali ibn al-Athir referring to Raynald as one of the greatest and wickedest of the Franks. Keep in mind the term Frank is just referring to a Western European crusader who's in the Holy Land. The exaggerated accounts of Raynald's wickedness have been exacerbated even more into the modern era through modern media such as the stupid Ridley Scott film Kingdom of Heaven, which, although it's a pretty film, depicts Raynald as a bloodthirsty zealot attacking a peaceful Islam. If you want to know how peaceful Islam was, see my last video on the Crusades, because Islam is not a religion of peace during this period, nor is Christianity. It is a stupid myth to call either religion a religion of peace. What is incredibly evident is that Raynald of Chatillon repeatedly took actions to increase his personal wealth and power, initially as Prince of Antioch, yes mind you, against fellow Christians for monetary reward, and then for punitive damages when he wasn't given the funds he wanted. He would further ignore any peace agreements in his raids into the Red Sea and against caravans, triggering a massive response that culminated in the fall of Jerusalem and the triggering of the Third Crusade. Although the written evidence can be seen to be biased, the actions of the man himself allude to their accuracy in labelling Raynald of Chatillon as a villainous figure, ultimately responsible, at least in part, for the downfall of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. Now, I know that one was a bit more lectury than anything, but I thought it would be a fun little topic to cover considering I just did a video on Ned Kelly, so why not do a video on Raynald of Chatillon? Maybe I've got armour on the brain, put it that way. But either way, thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, join the Discord, leave me a comment, and I will catch you all next time. Probably with something nautical, let's be honest. I've been looking a lot at the Finnish Winter War and the fun the Finnish batteries got up to, so keep an eye for that. Catches.